If you're like the average person, you're wasting a huge amount of money every year. And you don't have to just take my word for it. At least here in America, the average person spends 95% of their income every year, which is why most people have to work their entire lives. But I'm on a mission to help more people take control of their money this year. And I think it's easier than it sounds. And I know this works because by doing everything that I'm about to tell you, I'm saving $56,066 more dollars every year compared to the average person living in my city, which is why I should be able to retire before I turn 30 years old. So let me explain the 3 simple questions you need to ask yourself to stop wasting money, how to save more money without hating your life using the CCC system, and at the end, I'll show a few common things that you're probably wasting money on. But first, we need to talk about what it even means to be wasting money. Because unless you're literally lighting your money on fire, you're probably not completely wasting your money. And a lot of people never even think about whether they're wasting money or not, because at the end of the day, they're still buying things that they want. A lot of people like having things rather than money in their bank account. But what I've learned is that most people are absolutely terrible at getting the most value per dollar. They are not getting the best bang for the buck. In economics, there's this theory of opportunity cost. And the idea is that whenever you make a purchase, you're giving up the option to buy something else. So let's do a little example to drive this home. Let's say you have $1 and you can either buy an apple or an orange. They both cost $1. So you can't buy both. So let's say an apple is worth $2 to you and an orange is worth $1.50. In this example, both an apple and an orange are worth more than $1. But you should still buy the apple because it has lower opportunity cost. By buying an apple, you lose the opportunity to buy an orange. But if you bought an orange, you would lose the opportunity to buy an apple, which was even better. And what's important to realize here is that every single purchase requires you make a sacrifice. There is a trade-off with every expense. And most people are really bad about minimizing this trade-off. They just buy anything that seems worth it, even if there were better things to buy. Even if they don't realize it, they are wasting their money. And most people are wasting their money, probably including you. So how do you stop wasting money? Well, there are 3 questions you need to ask yourself. Why, where, and what? Let's go through each of them. Nobody has ever achieved a big, challenging goal on accident. But when it comes to money, that is what a lot of people try to do. You see this a lot at the start of the year when people are setting their New Year's resolutions. People tell themselves that they'll save more money, but they don't actually have a long-term plan. And without a long-term plan, it's almost impossible to stay on track. You might save more money for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but it's just too easy to lose focus and go back to old habits. That's why the first question you need to ask yourself is, why do I want to stop wasting money? It's going to be so much easier to make a change and stick to your plan if you have purpose and motivation. And whenever you feel tempted to quit, you can remind yourself of the real reason you decided to save more money in the first place. But as powerful as it is to have this end goal, it's usually not enough on its own. I know a lot of people who have big dreams, but they aren't doing the right things to get there. And that brings us to the second question you need to ask yourself. Where do you want to be in 1 year from now? And there are 5 things you should think about when you're answering this question for yourself. First, you want your goal to be as specific as possible. So instead of saying, I just want to waste less money, make your goal instead something like, I want to save $15,000 in the next year. Second, you want your goal to be measurable. That's why I like goals about money, because it's very easy to just measure how much money you've saved. And third, you want your goal to be achievable. So if you have $30,000 in savings and you make $60,000 per year, you probably shouldn't set a goal to have a 6-figure net worth in 1 year. Fourth, you want your goal to be relevant. As long as your goal is about wasting less money, you're probably good here. And fifth, you want your goal to be time-bound. Personally, I like having annual goals. But the important thing is that you just pick a date in the future that you'll check in on your goals and hold yourself accountable. And if your goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, then it's a smart goal. So if you're following along, you know why you want to save more money, and you know where you want to be in a year from now. So there's just one more question you need to ask yourself. What are you going to do to get there? But before you can answer this question, you need to do something that is really important. Because unless you know what you're wasting your money on, you're probably going to choose the wrong path. That's why I encourage everyone to track their expenses. But if you don't track your expenses, here's what I want you to do. The first thing you need to do is smash the like and subscribe button. That's not going to help your finances, but it does help the YouTube algorithm a lot more than you think. The second thing you need to do is create a spreadsheet to track your expenses. To make this easy, I dropped a free template in the video description, which you can just download. And third, I want you to look at your credit card statements and your bank statements for, at a minimum, the last 30 days. Ideally, the last 90 days. And record every single one of your expenses into that spreadsheet. With all of that data, it is going to be a lot easier to figure out how to stop wasting money in the next year. And to do that, I recommend the CCC system, which is something I came up with myself to help prioritize my own expenses. The CCC system is what I call the cost-cutting compass, which is something I first talked about in my book, How to Save Your First $100,000, which is linked in the description. But no worries if you haven't read that yet, because I'll explain everything you really need to know in this video. Basically, I created the cost-cutting compass because I saw way too many people prioritizing their biggest expenses, like housing, or their smallest expenses, like a single coffee, without really thinking about the value that each purchase adds to your life. But if you want to save more money without hating your life, then you need to cut out the things that aren't giving you value while continuing to buy the things that do give you value. Again, the whole goal is to stop wasting money, which means we only want to buy something if it is the best thing you can buy. So I think of this as a quad chart. In the bottom left are all the things that are really expensive, even though they don't give you much value. These are the worst. In the top left, we have things that are expensive, but also really valuable. In the bottom right, we have things that aren't very expensive, but they also don't provide much value. And then in the top right, we have things that are a lot of value, even though they aren't that expensive. These are the best purchases to make. So what I have my coaching clients do is sort their expenses into one of these 4 quadrants, because this will really help with prioritizing expenses. And the expenses in the bottom left quadrant are the easiest, because if something is really expensive but not that valuable, you should just immediately cut it out of your budget. For me, this would be something like a golf club membership. I don't like playing golf, so this would be a lot of money with very little benefit. If you have any expenses in this high cost, low benefit quadrant, you are wasting money. Expenses in the low cost, low benefit quadrant are a little trickier, and this is where most people have the majority of their expenses. The classic example is an overpriced coffee. Even though each expense is small on its own, it's usually pretty easy to cut out a lot of these small expenses and save a fair amount of money. So you don't have to stop buying everything that lands in this quadrant, but if you really want to save more money, you probably could cut out most of these things. The expenses that land in the high cost, high benefit quadrant are a little more complicated. Even though these are extremely expensive, they're also extremely valuable. But chances are there is a cheaper version of whatever you're buying that's almost as good. So if something is 90% as good, but only 50% of the price, that might be worth it. So try to replace these expenses with substitute items if you can. And lastly, we have things that are low cost, but high benefit. And these are things you probably shouldn't worry about trying to save money on. It's really not worth trying to cut these little expenses unless you're trying to be extremely frugal. But there's going to be a lot of people who say,
"But I don't want to deprive myself of anything just to save more money."
and I used to feel the same way. But then I realized something that I think a lot more people need to understand. So before I give you a short list of a few common things that you probably are wasting money on, I wanted to explain this lesson. Because I think a lot of people worry about feeling deprived, but they only think about feeling deprived in terms of things. People feel deprived of a bigger house or a nicer car or even something as simple as a Starbucks coffee. But what a lot of people don't realize is that by choosing to buy all of those things, you are depriving yourself of your time and your freedom. Because it turns out that financial freedom is just another thing you can buy. Every dollar you save is a little more FU money, and a little more independence. So no matter what you do with your money, you are buying something. You just have to choose whether you want to buy more things or buy more time. I value my time a lot more, which is why I live so frugally and should be able to retire in less than a decade. Other people value things more than I do, so they'll be a little less frugal, but they'll have to work longer, which is totally fine. Everybody has to find their own balance. But at least what I've seen is that a lot of people say they want financial freedom, but they spend their money like they don't. They waste their money buying stuff when they could buy more time. So to help you stop wasting money, I did want to talk about 3 things that I think almost everyone wastes money on. And I do really want you to use the cost-cutting compass to figure this out for yourself, but hopefully this is still helpful. The first expense is one that I talk a lot about on this channel, because it's always going to be easier to save more money when you have lots of substitute options. And that's why food is pretty much the easiest way to save more money, because there are a million different ways to get all of the calories you need. And just doing your own grocery shopping is almost guaranteed to save you more money than eating out, so that alone could save you thousands of dollars per year. And it's also super easy to save money just by comparing prices and buying cheaper things. Another super easy way to save money is to just cut out the expenses that you never needed in the first place. I grew up watching only the free TV channels because my parents thought it was a waste of money to pay for cable. And now I almost exclusively listen to free podcasts, watch YouTube videos, and read free newsletters. So it's never made sense to me that people spend $1,000 per year or more just for cable and streaming services. To me, this is a complete waste of money. And lastly, I wanted to talk about an expense which I think very few people realize they're wasting money on. But this might actually be the most powerful way to save. It absolutely shocks me how many people buy new cars even though they lose their value so extremely quickly. And then, no matter which car you drive, people act like driving the car is free, which it is absolutely not. Gasoline, maintenance, and insurance actually make up the majority of the costs of owning a car, which means every time you drive around, you are spending money. You might not be able to go completely car-free like me, but just driving less could literally save you thousands of dollars. So these 3 expenses, food, entertainment, and driving, are really common ways that people are wasting money. And by keeping these 3 expenses low, I'm able to live on less than $20,000 per year, even though I live in an extremely expensive area. The average single American spends more than double than that, and what's even crazier is the area I live in is 50% more expensive than the national average. That means I'm saving $56,066 more dollars every single year compared to the average single American living in this area. I put a whole breakdown of my expenses in the video description where you can check out exactly how I do that. So if you really want to stop wasting money, here is your homework. First, and this is something you can do right now, is open up your calendar and go either 6 months or a year in the future and set a reminder to check in on your progress. And second, I highly recommend you go through the cost-cutting compass and sort all of your expenses into one of the 4 quadrants. And at the end of the day, the only way to stop wasting money is to make real change in your life. Nothing I say will help at all unless you hold yourself accountable to your own goals. And just remember that whenever you decide to stop wasting money, you're buying back a little bit more of your time. And you might be shocked at just how quickly small changes to your budget can make massive differences on your wealth. I actually did the math, and I figured out that you could retire as a tax-free millionaire even if you only saved $19 per day. I explained exactly how you could do that in this video right here, so you definitely need to check that out. Reaching your financial goals might be easier than you think.